Did you have any knowledge about what's going on in Poland before you came here?
I didn't. I actually, it is 100% always about the music and what we do, but we also live in a changing world. I didn't know a lot about Warsaw, and I didn't know a lot about Poland just in general, and over the last couple of days, just kind of been watching what's been going on here, and it's, you know, I wish I could snap my fingers and make it to where everybody could get along with each other. But it's also an ever-changing time, too. It's 2018. If you look at, like, Generation X, which is kind of my upbringing, because I turned 40 this year, and then you look at where the millennials are, you know, coming up from the younger generation, there's a lot of disagreement. And I think that you have older individuals that have, quite frankly, been on the earth a little bit longer, and then you've got, you know, people that are just kind of, you know, I mean, I think the problem sometimes stems with the fact that a lot of people that have their opinion, they talk too much. They're trying to just make problems, or they're just trying to hear the sound of their own voice. If you're looking for something negative, it's very easy to find it. If you're trying to find solutions and grab the positivity, you have to work at that.
The title of the last album is Attention, Attention. So I want to ask you about what we should bring attention to right now in these difficult times, not only in Poland, but in America because of Trump and all the stuff going on.
Get Up was the sounding board for the rest of the material that became the album Attention, Attention. Eric deals with something called clinical depression. And it's not something where, in America, we have the saying, which is, you know, having a case of the Mondays, where you just kind of, you feel blue or...
Poland, it's the same.
Yeah. He doesn't have that. He has a daily fight with his mind. And I don't like to say fight anymore, but it's something very, very real. And he would tell you, if he could go inside of his head and pull that part of his brain out, he would, but he can't. Some days are really, really up, some days are really, really down. When this song was written, Eric told me, he said, listen, if we're gonna do this deep of a dive and be this honest and be this forthcoming, then we can't hide anything and we can't be ambiguous. We have to be very, very open, because what the album represents is this. You need to not be afraid of your failures. You don't need to be afraid to fail. The best way I can say it is this. You have to use your failures in life as fuel, as a learning experience, as a tool, if you will. Because we don't think that people are going to be defined by their failures. We feel like people will be defined by the fact that they refuse to give up. The whole album, though, is also about, you know, rediscovering your empathy towards your fellow man, woman, and child. It's about, you know, we just don't want people to lose their humanity. And we also don't want people to lose what me and you are doing right now, which is having a conversation eye to eye, and we're not doing this. It's tough, you know. Everybody, it's that social awkwardness that I see with kids now.
Are you into Instagram and all the stuff?
Yeah, I know how to do all that stuff, and, you know, we have a very elaborate Instagram, and, I mean, Twitter and, you know, Facebook and
as a band,
Snapchat.
but I'm asking you as a private person, do you use it?
Yeah, I have a personal Instagram, a personal Twitter. The only thing I don't do is Facebook. You know, another thing that I don't do is I don't post pictures of my son. I have a 10-year-old little boy who's not very little anymore. Social media can be wonderful, and it can also be devastating. It depends on what direction you want to go. And I'm not one also to shy away from really putting people, there's not a curtain anymore. There's no such thing as Oz, if that makes sense. Like the Wizard of Oz. There's no Mad Hatter back there. Like it literally, it's all out there. And if you want to find the truth or what have you, or you want to find who you are, I think that you need to do that by listening to your heart.
What do you think about all these people making careers by Instagram, becoming influencers, not doing anything else with their lives, like being musicians, actors, writers, whatever?
I think that that's the time that we're in. I don't think that, you know, it's not 1991 anymore, and it's not 2000, it's 2018. It's so funny to watch people bag on other people that are having success. You know what I mean? When someone's having a lot of success, they're like, well, they suck. Well, why do they suck if they have 40 million followers? You know what I mean? I mean, obviously they don't suck that bad, you know, so, but
there's a lot of shit getting 30 million followers, so
right.
I don't think it's a good, you know, kind of test if you have a lot of followers or not.
You're right. We've had in the last year, this year alone, we've had a bunch of different companies come in and they're code writers, they're algorithm. They build robots basically for social media. And they're like, we can give you 10 million followers. We can give you 20 million if you want. I'm like, yeah, but they're not real, you know? Because we have like, I think we're approaching 400,000 followers on Instagram, but they're all real people. They're all real fans. They're interested in the band. I'd rather do it that way than, you know, the latter. But, you know, with the question that you asked, sometimes I feel like people need to just calm down a little bit. Like, everybody wants to be famous, but no one's willing to do the work.
You said once that rock and roll is not only a genre of music for you, it's a kind of lifestyle. What is the best thing rock and roll gave you and the worst thing rock and roll gave you in your life?
The best thing rock and roll gave me was I think in a lot of ways the best thing that it gave me was my attitude. Lemmy from Motorhead said, before he passed away, he said, rock and roll was invented to be played loud and piss your parents off. As unique as that is.
As Lemmy was, you know.
As Lemmy was, right. The reality is that I don't look at rock and roll as a genre of music. I look at rock and roll as a way of life. Because you have to think about how many times rock and roll has been there for you when you needed it most. I don't know if there's a worst thing that it gave me. Rock and roll gave me confidence. When I was growing up, I wasn't a very attractive kid. I was kind of a heavy dude, you know, I had a lot of acne, you know, and so I got pushed around a lot, I got beat up a lot. The other day somebody said, what's your guilty pleasure? And I'm like, I don't really look at her as a guilty pleasure. He was talking about musically, but I was like, Madonna, definitely.
It's not a guilty pleasure.
Yeah, I love Madonna, but looking at it from a very broad standpoint, my generation sometimes when you talk about like streaming and downloading and everything like that, they're like, it's just all free. They don't know what the value in the music is. There's no more value on music. I'm like, that's preposterous. Because in the last 5 years, not just in the United States, but like globally, the touring industry is up 400%. 400%. That means so many artists are touring and so many people are out there because you can't recreate a live event. And it's interesting, in the United States, you see cell phones up like during the whole show.
Do you have a problem with that?
I don't have a problem with that. If that's what you want to do and you want to film the whole show and not be in the moment, that's up to you. It's totally up to you. My whole thing with that is there are moments in the US where, like in our set, I'll be like, put your cell phones down for a minute just for the next song. I want you to be in the moment. You know, you come to mainland Europe, in the UK, in this area, you may see the phones go up maybe 10 minutes of the show, maybe. But that whole outlook, and I think it's an amazing time to be alive right now when it comes to music and when it comes to different, yeah, absolutely.
This is what I wanted to ask you about. This was my next question for you.
It's limitless.
Okay.
It's beautiful. I love that. It's awesome. I read an article the other day where it was an older gentleman in a big band just destroying social media. And
Tell me who.
I can't. That's not, it's not. I will tell you, what can I tell you? I can tell you he's got dreadlocks. Just complaining about the state of the music industry and the state of how people consume music and everything like that. If he would take a moment and think to himself, you know, you're how old, dude? He's 50-something. You can't blame a 10-year-old or a 16-year-old right now because this is how they grew up. They don't know what a CD is. You know what I mean? They barely know what a vinyl is. You know, and that's funny how vinyl has had such a big resurgence in the last,
it's
like,
a trend, right?
Yeah, but I've seen kids that are 16, like 10 to 18 years old, finding a new way. they'll say, wow, this is really, really cool. There's a new way I can experience listening to music. You know, you open up a vinyl, it's big and it's detailed. And because when I was a kid, I loved opening up a record and going, where did they record it? Who recorded it? But the generation now, you can't blame them because this is when they grew up. This is what they know. Streaming is what they know. They know Spotify, they know Apple Music, they know YouTube. That's not their fault.
Feel that you can influence young people talking about the addictions, you know, preventing them in some way?
I have no choice but to be myself. Whether people want to listen or not listen, it's totally up to them. They have free will. My background, I was a massive drug addict for a good portion of my life and a major alcoholic, what we would call a drunk. There's a difference between an alcoholic and a drunk. An alcoholic is something where they need the drink to kind of take the edge off of the world. A drunk is just trying to fall down. Like, just wants the day to be over with to get to the next one. I don't have a lot of reasoning behind, you know, why I have an addictive personality or why I became addicted to drugs, and why I had problems with alcohol. It wasn't until I realized that, okay, I have a choice. I can continue going down this road with drugs and alcohol, and I'll probably be dead within a year. Or I can make a decision, and it did have a lot to do with when my son was born. When I turned 30, my son's born on the 26th of December. My birthday's on January 10th, so if you do the math, my 30th birthday, my son, that's when my son was born, and he changed my life forever. Because he made me understand that it was no longer about me, and because I'm no good to him if I'm dead. So I did have to make a decision in regards to, you know, can I stop? The reality is, yeah, I can stop, but I had times when, because I stopped for a little while and then I'd fall off. The reality is, once I realized that I'm never not going to be a drug addict, I'll always be a drug addict. I'll never not be an alcoholic and a drunk. I will always be those things. It's whether or not I allow them to have power over me. And the fact is, I had to learn how to respect my addiction. It doesn't mean I have to like it, but I had to respect it. Because what happens is, from a psychological standpoint, the first time you do a drug, it paves a road in your mind. And the first time you drink, it paves a road in your mind. The problem with that is it all leads to the same dead end. You know, the road is never under construction. And I hope I'm being kind of, this is the best way I know how to describe it.
Yeah, so far it's okay.
Okay. Those pathways are paved, and they only go down one road, and they only lead to the same dead end. You have to understand that that's never going to change. Like, the road's not going to get better. The scenery is not going to all of a sudden, oh, look, there's flowers, there's trees. It's never going to change. You're going to chase that high the very first time. Like, you're always going to chase that first time you got high. It's never going to happen. So I had to make a decision of, well, I can let this take me away from my son and my family, my band, my brothers, my friends, you know, or I can make a conscious decision. I don't really talk about my sobriety a lot. I don't bring it up. If people ask me about it, I'll talk about it. But I have to do what works for me. And what works for me may not work for another addict. You know what I mean? The fact of the matter is that when it comes to that part of my life, I literally have to live every day, one day at a time. I didn't do drugs today, and I haven't drank today. I don't know what I'll do tomorrow.
My last question is, I know you don't know this, but we are both Capricorns. And
I didn't know that. When's your birthday?
January 5th. I read today that Capricorns are very stubborn, and they're always alone on their way to the top.
Interesting.
Is it something that we can say about you?
I'm stubborn. Alone on my way to the top, absolutely not true. There is absolutely no way in the world that I could do anything in regards to the life that I have, the life that, you know, I see for the future of not only myself, but for the people that I work with. We, in the band, we always look at life as, they're different mountains. So like if me and you are looking at a big giant mountain and we're both going, well, we're gonna need to get to the top of this. If I look at it and I think that I gotta do it on my own, there's absolutely no way I'll get to the top. But if I ask you, hey, if you'll do it with me and we do it together, I bet we can get to the top. And then once me and you get to the top, we can look at each other, a high five, give each other a hug. But what should we do next? We should probably go find a bigger mountain. So that aspect wouldn't want to do it alone. Would never want to do it alone.
You know why I'm asking? Because when I talk with rock musicians, they always say, yeah, when you go to the top, there is a moment that you have to be alone because people leave you, because you have the success, the money, and all the stuff. And there is a moment that you have to be alone.
I think that there is a moment not being alone, but a moment to reflect. Because when you're alone, you don't have anyone to share it with. Now, it took me a long time to think like that. I used to be like, live fast, live hard, leave a good-looking corpse. I don't think like that anymore. I used to have a very, you know, and I've never really said this on camera, and I've never said this in an interview. A few years ago, all of a sudden, out of the blue, I had a real fear of dying. Just a real fear of death. Not to where I was paralyzed, like to get up every day and like I wouldn't go out of the house or anything like that. It's just.
But it happens. It happens.
Yeah, well, but here's the thing about me. Like, I have to move constantly. I don't stay in one place very long. My mother's always said that I have a gypsy heart. She doesn't know where it came from, but she's like, he is not meant to sit still. He's meant to move. But she's also said he's meant to move because he has something to say, and he wants to share it. It's the same thing with writing a song. People will ask me sometimes, they'll be like, what's your best advice, you know, in regards to in the industry and being a songwriter or a musician? And I've always said, don't write a song because you want to be famous. Write a song because you have something to say.